I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast. Happy Wednesday, July 2nd. I'm here with Andrew Cleary, season 5, episode 15, recording this a couple of days after the Austrian Grand Prix, which Lando Norris won the Austrian Grand Prix. Really, some exciting storylines that have come out from this weekend. A lot to talk about. But first, Andrew, happy Canada Day. Yesterday was our big holiday here in Canada. We got the jerseys, we're repping it. Proud of our country. How are you doing, my man?
Good, man. Happy Canada Day to you too. Very excited celebrating our nation's day, really. July 1st is always fun. It's a great day in terms of celebrating Canada. And as other sports, if you think about if you're a big sports fan, a lot of things happen on July 1st. Signing bonuses go for hockey, free agent frenzy, baseball signings or baseball contracts, paydays happen that day too for deferrals. But nevertheless, it was the focus on this Canada Day was reviewing the Austrian Grand Prix as well as some of the bombshell type news that got dropped these past couple of days.
It's been pretty interesting. Lando Norris fends off Piastri for the Austrian GP victory in a thrilling race-long battle. And I guess that was some of the questions of how is McLaren going to respond after the Canadian Grand Prix mishap with both of them colliding towards the end of the race. You know, a track that heavily favorites Max Verstappen, and it is a Red Bull. They call it the Red Bull Ring for a reason. I guess let's talk about qualifying. We had a nice battle between, I guess, the McLarens and the Ferraris. But can we just talk about Steak Sauber for a second?
They looked good all weekend. I was really surprised. And um, kudos to Max for giving Bortoleto, recognizing he had a great weekend kind of leading up to qualifying and knowing that, Max didn't like his car whatsoever this weekend. Pretty much he called it, quote unquote, undrivable. He's like, I'm gonna give him a tow. Why not? He earns it. He's a young driver. He gets in and Bortoleto qualified amazingly. And we're starting to see Sauber kind of now score some big points in the championship, which is really great to see overall. But kudos to Bortoleto for starting P8. And then unfortunately Nico had a little bit of a mishap having to start at the back of the grid. But that didn't stop him in the race overall. We'll get to the race, but first and foremost, I want to say Lando Norris coming off a really just unfortunate weekend in Canada. God, did he wake up this week and just show how much of a beast of a driver he can be. That qualifying lap was ridiculous.
I think he had his final in Q3. He was like zero point 0.5 seconds ahead of
Mhm.
everybody.
I know there was some flags that came into play there, but still being zero point 0.5 seconds ahead, like 5/10 ahead of everybody on the grid is just a ridiculous, but just step to make.
And I think that really just kind of, emulated their strategy going into, Austria into the race day. And I guess the question was going to be like, now that they were I think was it 1-2 or 1-3 going in, um, Zach Brown going to ask them to, play nicely? Are they going to let them drive? But like, kudos to them. They said, all right, you guys fight it out if you want. However, like, there was a couple of close calls with Oscar Piastri hitting, almost getting the back. Had to slam on the brakes pretty hard.
We were
But
literally like 1 centimeter away from Charles Leclerc winning
You
this
lose.
Grand Prix and a double podium for Ferrari. Like we were super close to that happening.
but yeah, no, I think that was like exactly. And I think Norris converted pole position to the lead on turn one. He came in. I think it was the first stint for Piastri. I think Piastri did look a little bit faster. He launched several attacks and at one point muscled his way past for the positions to be swiftly reversed. But let's talk about that first turn incident. Like, you had all that going on, and then you just had Kimi Antonelli, I think, young 18-year-old driver, just dive bomb right into the turn
Well,
coming up the hill. And lo and behold, out of all the drivers you hit the driver that's probably most loved at that track.
Well, it just goes to show how bad of a weekend it was for Red Bull. I mean, to quote Vettel when he was talking previously about um who was it? Danny Kvyat back in his Red Bull days. Kimmy locked the back tires and he went in like a torpedo just into turn three, like just zipped his car right into the back of Max Verstappen. And he look already going back from a bad race, like our bad qualifying session, to just an even worse result for Max at Red Bull Ring. And he was just fed up for the entire weekend. And that was kind of the cherry on top of the crap Sunday for him. But you know what? Kudos to Max for, when he got out of the car, Kimmy apologized him right away, and he just talked to him about it in that case, because I know that when he started out, he would have just gotten, lambasted pretty much for how bad of a move that was, and kind of can kick confidence and whatnot. Now, is that a little gamesmanship for future years in terms of being a teammate? Who knows? But it's good to see that Max is able just to kind of take a deep breath, let it all go for Kimmy, and they were able just to kind of share a moment after the crash to make sure everything's okay. And kudos to Kimmy too. He went right to the Red Bull team paddock after the race to apologize to the team there too.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I don't know if you remember the Family Guy episode back in the day where Spider-Man, everybody gets one. So
Yeah.
is this is this Max Verstappen's like, listen, Kimmy, you're gonna get it this one time and that one time only.
Yeah.
And then talk about like a bad weekend in itself. And then you also had, Yuki Tsunoda like finishing P16, where it can get bad to worse. And you had Liam Lawson, the guy that they replaced, the one that they took out of that seat and placed Yuki in, finishing P6 for massive points for RB this weekend.
We posed the question of the day on our Instagram stories after the race, where the question of the day was: Is Red Bull a backmarker team without Max Verstappen? And of those who answered the poll, 100%,
You lose.
not even any variation, 100% of our fans said yes. Red Bull are a backmarker team without Verstappen, and it's true. Because look how poor Sonoda was this weekend in Austria in a home race, basically for Red Bull at their own ring. And oh my goodness gracious, just the team. It's a case study for how much they've fallen, and the thing too is it clearly goes to show if Max Verstappen is not in the car, they are not sniffing points whatsoever.
I got a text from a Red Bull fan. Not going to name who it is, but this individual said, "I have no faith in Red Bull being able to deliver with the new regs next year."
Like, which is scary because when you think about it, there might be a lot of changes coming in next season, and Red Bull are starting to make their own engines, right, with Ford.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't pan out, oh my God, like how long does like Christian Horner have? Like the clock is ticking at this point, right? And it's like, when is the time coming? When is doomsday for Christian Horner?
Look, and I think that is like a bigger question. Is it safe to say like maybe the constructors is already out of reach for Red Bull? So they even know that they're going to probably end up even lower in the championship standings going into next year if because the second seat has not been able to even get to the level of Sergio Perez's points. But like I guess a question I was listening to Nailing the Apex with Tim Hernani, and they were talking about is it over basically for Red Bull in terms of the drivers? Is it over for Max Verstappen? And I think
It,
after a weekend like this, McLaren maximizing as much points as possible, it's looking pretty bleak.
Here's my thing. If your team is not named McLaren, actually, you know what? Even if you're McLaren, you've built such a big lead in the championship. I don't see why not everybody flips over to to the new regs. It
Mhm.
just kind of cuts development on 2025. This is what we're getting. You bring the minor upgrades that you need to keep the car running. But honestly, if I'm Red Bull, if I'm Ferrari, if I'm Mercedes, which Mercedes have done already, is I'd flip development completely to 2026 right now. McLaren has got such a big advantage in the Constructors Championship. There's no point in wasting any more money on this season whatsoever. So but the problem is that without Adrian Newey, I don't know how good Red Bull is at developing a car. We don't know. We really don't know. So
You don't have
that is
Jonathan Wheatley there anymore because he's over at Kick Sauber. Adrian Newey went to obviously Aston Martin, and he's barely shown himself at the track. I think Monaco was the last time we saw him really because he's just been at the factory the whole time.
oh well, and Aston Martin's doing it right. I mean, this is what I said at the beginning of the season. I like kudos to Fernando for making a one-step strategy work on a two-stop day, to be honest with you, and really defending off Bortoleto, which is funny because I believe Alonso's agency manages
Yeah,
Bortoleto as well.
yes.
So it was kind of like, do I piss off my boss or not? You know what I mean? So, but honestly, kudos to Fernando for keeping Bortoleto back on such old hard tires. It was great to see. But Lance had a terrible weekend overall, finishing, a full lap down and not really having a sniff of any points position. But obviously, like the
Can I
car
just
is really go
sorry,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt you. Can we just build on that last comment? Because I think that really is probably a question that I think our fans probably want to know is like, depending what team you are in the constructors, what is your focus? Do you focus right on 2026? Or if
Oh,
you're some of these teams that like maybe we need to kind of get some points here, maybe we want to get some good constructors. Because a case could be made for Williams, is Williams was starting to have a good season, at the start of the year with like Carlos Sainz and, Alex Albon. And the last couple of weeks, they've kind of deflated. And I think they're starting to focus on 2026. But then you had this weekend of another, I think it was double DNF. Carlos couldn't even make it. His car caught on fire. His brakes were. Then Alex Albon had to retire too. And, you talk about like Kick Sauber starting to get some points. Eventually you could see Williams dropping down.
yeah, it's honestly a great question because
Maybe some of the mid, like the top four teams, you can maybe have a discussion of that. Maybe now we just focus 2026, but some of these lower tier, no, I'm going to call it lower tier teams, but five and below, like what is your strategy if you are the team principal?
well, okay, so if we're looking at the constructor standings right now, we have Williams that has about a 19-point lead on Racing Bull. Or
Correct.
no, yeah. So yeah, Williams is tough because it depends. It depends on if you can financially, fund your own development for next season without having to deal with championship money. I think that plays a huge factor into it. And A and B, how much wind tunnel time do you need to really make your car competitive? For a team like Williams, I think you want as much money as possible to help fund the continuous development of your factory and really like focus on that long-term plan. Will that hinder 2026 focus in terms of development? It might. I don't know. But I think Williams, you kind of need money from this perspective to really be able to build. Racing Bulls, like I don't see them being an issue if they drop down to P7A to get more wind tunnel time in that regards. Haas is a team that will need more money to stay afloat, even though they got big sponsorships. More money would be good, so that P6 finish is huge. I'm looking at a team like Aston Martin. It's okay if they finish to P9 or P10. To be honest with you, I'd rather them do that. To me, the money isn't the
Are we
issue.
tanking for the Austin Matthews pick
It
here?
really is. It really is. We are tanking to have a better car for the new regs. And it's such like I know it's not like one strategy you want to have in Formula One, right? But to be honest with you, to kind of do a factory reset, so to speak, no pun intended, you really need to be able to gain as much with in terms of the timing for the wind tunnel and the testing, because Lawrence Stroll has deep pockets and money is not really a factor until I would say coming out from now on. But if you want to make sure Adrian Newey can give you a car that is going to be championship level, in these regs, you give him as much time in that wind tunnel as possible.
I guess like if we can segue, I think these are very good points. Let's try to segue back to the brace as much as we can.
Mhm.
Um, do you think that this weekend was a success for Ferrari. While it might, the grand scheme of things, let's be real, like there is that, I'm surprised it hasn't been a meme yet. There's a photo of, I think it's Lewis Hamilton in the garage after the race, looking at the times and showing that he was a minute behind basically Lando Norris. Um, while you got third and fourth, I think you should be happy with that. Like given the circumstances, you took advantage of, Mercedes didn't look good this weekend. Sorry, with Kimi out and then Max Verstappen out. And some other teams that kind of got into the picture would probably didn't need to be in the picture. But like, do you think it was a successful weekend for the Tifosi or Ferrari? And like, let's be honest, like it will be a big weekend for Lewis Hamilton in the British Grand Prix. This has been one of his most
Mhm.
successful tracks that he as a driver has done, and like I'm probably expecting that he will be able on the. I think that this is probably his first podium. Will probably be this weekend. I've said that for pretty much. I said that for Canada, it didn't happen. I'm guaranteeing there's probably a podium for him this weekend.
Yeah, if we're gonna look at this weekend, I think McLaren is obviously the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of become the Red Bull in terms of the constructors. So finishing 20 seconds behind McLaren, yeah, it sucks. But that's kind of where you are. That's kind of where everybody is. But you're the best. You're that team. You're that
Yeah, that
second
number
place team,
two.
right? You're that number two team. And what you did is you maximized the number two team points this weekend, right? Leclerc finished P3, Hamilton P4. Now, Hamilton, he did finish 10 seconds behind Leclerc. However, I think the problem that we continue to keep seeing and having is the strategists at Ferrari continue to ingrain themselves in the sense that, well, it's a matter of they use the data way too much in terms of their strategy.
Hmm.
It's like when analytics becomes way too much prevalent in sport. You kind of have to let the driver feel it too. And there was a point this where Lewis is like, I'm good on these tires. Let me continue to go. Because maybe he can catch up to Charles. But they pit him to guarantee that P3, P4 spot. And we've seen that in the past too, like pitting so that they can quote unquote maximize the points based on the race, but not letting the drivers be able to dictate how maybe they feel and use that as a variable for the race strategy. So I think that is where a problem can lie for future for
Hmm.
Ferrari, and I think it still hampers them a bit. And maybe pisses Lewis off because a lot of it used to be strategy, but also feel, right? Him and Bono would talk things through and then be able to, depending on how he felt in the car, go from there.
I think we also kind of I think we talked about this last week, is that like every race week that goes by, he talks about something new with the car or something. And like he's still trying to get the feel of like, what's it like to be in a Ferrari? What's it like the whole thing? And it's like compared to like him at Mercedes, where they just being same consistency, the same thing for, I guess, how long was he there for? 9 years, I think.
So
More
yeah,
than nine.
2013 to
12 years at least. Yeah.
2024. So yeah, like 12 seasons.
Yeah. I guess I think
Like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about them overall? Because you probably hear a lot from because you probably talk to your dad a lot, right? He's a huge Tifosi, right? So it's like, how do you two feel about this whole situation?
like here's a good analogy. When Todt came to Ferrari, I think it was 94. Rome wasn't built in a day. Like Ferrari under Michael Schumacher was not, like the first couple of years, he didn't win as much as they wanted. It took literally, and we're maybe so used to it. Maybe as we're Toronto, like Maple Leafs fans, we want like consistency right away. It's gonna have to take some time. There has to be a blueprint. It's not gonna happen right away. And like I think the new regs do definitely help that, like, okay, now we can all be on the same, pedestal, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it's going to take like, when did Schumacher first win? His first win for Ferrari was 2000, I think.
2000. Yeah.
And he was there for a good couple of years already. And
I
so,
think, yeah. I think he won his third or fourth season with Ferrari. And then he pulled off five in a row.
yeah, so it's gonna take some time. He's gonna have to just get used to just the dynamics of being with the team, and like, yeah, and that's what my dad said. He said the same thing. He's like, look, when Michael came to Ferrari, it was not smooth sailing. You had those battles against Jacques Villeneuve. You had the fights against Damon Hill. Mika Häkkinen played was very tense with him. Juan Pablo Montoya and then obviously towards the end of Ferrari's career, then you had Fernando Alonso come in to the picture and Kimi Räikkönen. So you go through your stages, but like, yeah, I would say it's going to take a couple of years. I'm sorry, like I hate to say this, like you're not going to. Rome wasn't built in one day.
No, it's true. And I think at that point, the engineers need to work with the drivers more and let the drivers feel it out and see what they can do. Because it really is just a matter of testing. I guess what also bugs me is like Russell finished 30 seconds behind Lewis. So they had such a gap that they could have let him go. And in the end, pit stopped him and he still finishes P4. Like it's just
Well, he was
now,
basically racing by himself. Like there
well,
was,
exactly. So like let him try some stuff out.
as long as you didn't have like a major screw up in the pit lane, maybe do
And
you
we're
throw
talking
on the
about Lewis
softs and
Hamilton here.
just.
He's the greatest driver of all time. Like he's not going to be one that bends it into a turn because his tires are bad.
So it's interesting. I guess we'll kind of see how, things will go. Like let's talk about a couple of other drivers. Yeah, Liam Lawson capitalized, convert his top six grid slot into a top six finish.
Do you know he has more points scored for Racing Bulls than Sonoda does for Red Bull this season?
You lose.
Do you think that they're going to switch back each other?
I think it's a matter of a point that the car sucks. Like the Red Bull car sucks. Like there's not much they can do about it. And Lawson just had a fantastic weekend overall. Qualified sixth, finished sixth.
Yeah, and his teammate got hit with a 10-second penalty for setting Colapinto into a spin earlier. And can we just talk about how
What
Colapinto
the
almost.
hell was going on there between
He said
Sonoda, Colapinto, and Piastri
he
during the
didn't
race?
say that he didn't see him, but it reminded me, was it Juan Pablo Montoya who said, like, look in your mirrors or something? Like, how did you not? Yeah, Schumacher said, he's like, oh, I didn't see him. Or like Juan Pablo's like, you'd be blind or stupid to not
Well,
see
and
me.
it
Yeah.
was twice that happened to Piastri. I mean, like when he was charging up the field, like, Sonoda and Colapinto are fighting for P14 on track. And, the blue flags are just flaring in the guy's eyes, but they're too busy battling each other out. And Colapinto pushes Piastri off track. It's like, dude, what the hell? And honestly, so funny. Like we never really see this side of Piastri, who had a great comment afterwards. He said something along the lines of, I think it was, Alpine is still trying to find a way to F me after all these years on the radio. And I was like, oh my God, Oscar, I didn't know you're this sassy. I love it.
Yeah, the little quiet guy, he's starting to come out
Well,
some of his words.
But I do think though, like the 2000 IQ move though was Norris towards the end of the race where he got through the back marker traffic on lap 70 and Oscar had to get through the back marker traffic, but it was Alonso. Like, Norris just kept Alonso in his DRS so that he couldn't get through back marker traffic. It was kind of like using the back markers to help him win. It was like a great strategy on Lando's part. And if I was Oscar, I would have been fuming, but you have to give fair play.
That's true. Yeah. So a couple other winners and losers. We've kind of talked about Alpine, didn't really look good this weekend. Talked about Lance Stroll, loser category, I would say. Despite having some promising, I think, numbers in practice, just really couldn't convert. Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes was not a good weekend for him because of the crash. Ferrari, we can consider it a win, I guess, because we're the second best car on the grid right now. Um, I think
Here,
overall,
here's Stroll's performance during a weekend. Starts here and it goes like this. And I don't know if it's because of his wrist injury and how many laps he's taking every weekend in the car. Does it get just tired, more tired, more tired, right? And just becomes tougher and tougher and tougher to drive. We'll go into the news because
Oh, we have so
let's
much
go
to
into the
talk.
news because
Okay.
let's go into the news of the week because there has just been some bombshells that were just dropped.
We're going to go through just some administrative news first, and then we'll get into some of the exciting ones. Formula One and FIA have announced the dates for the 2026 preseason testing, with 3 tests set to
Three!
take place
Three! Oh my God.
prior to the campaign getting underway. Test 1 will be a private test and will take place at Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. between January 26th to 30th, while Test 2 testings will be held at Bahrain International Circuit between February 11th to 13th. Quote me, I think this is the new track that is coming next year on the circuit, the Barcelona track. So I guess.
Oh no, that one would be in Madrid. So it's they're
Oh,
still
sorry. Yeah,
so
yeah,
they're still testing at the regular Barcelona and Bahrain tracks.
correct.
But the fact that they have three tests is really just a matter of getting those new regs on point to begin with. Plus, it gives
Exactly.
Cadillac and give a chance to really be able to connect the car up.
Oh my gosh, we haven't talked about Cadillac yet. Yeah, okay. Bahrain will host the last three February, and then from February 18 to 2020 before season starts in Australia, March 6th to 8th. Also, it's been confirmed there was a little bit of communication between stakeholders, the Azerbaijan government. It's moving from the Sunday, September 27th to Saturday, 26th to accommodate a national day. Um, and so the
And
Azerbaijan
like
government.
when you're in the FIA, sorry to cut you off, but when you're making the schedule, do you not just like follow up with the government being like, hey, it's a national holiday on Sunday. Do you think you want to race on there or not? I mean, do you not think of that when you're doing the schedule? Or are we forgetting that the whole world revolves around Liberty Media and the F1 sport?
Well, I was gonna. Oh man. Well, I was gonna say that the same thing for the Canadian Grand Prix because it would fall if they were thinking about doing it the following May. That would have been the long weekend in May. So yeah, I guess it's one of those things. You just send an email just to double and triple check. But yeah, nevertheless, you want to talk about a fellow Canadian that is now a spokesperson for
Yeah.
Cadillac?
Which is exciting. I mean, Keanu Reeves, I don't know if you know this, he's in The Matrix, and that movie's on
You
all
know the
the freaking
Matrix?
time now on TV. I mean, Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, it's always on TV every time I turn it on. But yeah, Keanu Reeves and North One are teaming up to start a unscripted documentary series that's going to follow Cadillac through the 2026 season, which I think is going to be pretty cool because it'll be like the behind the scenes look of a new team coming in to see how they perform.
I just the man in the myth, the legend. Also in Cyberpunk was a very big video game a couple years
Yeah.
ago. Just like he's just and then every other commercial he's doing. I forget the one about him playing video games and interacting. So yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to capitalize on this kind of drive to survive style. And
Mhm.
now that we're seeing that data has shown that like the market of fans is getting significantly younger and younger per year, and a lot of them, look to Netflix, look to Amazon, look to these like mini series, and then now the success of F1 Academy. It's more Canadians. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, but that wasn't the biggest news of the week. John, what was the biggest news of the week? And it dropped today, too.
Something in the lines of, Max Verstappen being approached or talking to Mercedes by potentially going there next year. And what I can tell you is my sources have, which I have no sources, would be pretty funny if he goes to Mercedes. And, especially how the ship has been sailing for Red Bull this year. Why not jump
Well,
ship with everybody else?
well, because here's the thing, right? There's a clause in Max's contract that if he falls outside of P3 in the drivers' championship, it can trigger his exit clause. And by the way we're going right now, he is finishing well outside P3. So, and then also when you hear that Russell has declined his option next year with Mercedes and hoping to sign a longer term deal, you know, put two and two together. Sky Sports Italy reporting that there's been significant, intense discussions between Toto and Max to bring Max to frickin' Mercedes. Like unbelievable, Jeff.
I think a lot of questions also there too is you like this is kind of weird that George Russell has not been signed. Like you obviously have Kimi Antonelli coming in, and like you think, especially like he's made some promising moves this year, or and just like winning some races and over his career so far at Mercedes. You think that like Toto would want to lock in, but no, it's if there's an opportunity like a four-time champion coming, like can only imagine the amount of t-shirt sales. But yeah, you talk about that clause. Verstappen is currently third in the standings, 9 points ahead of Russell, 36 in front of Ferrari Charles Leclerc with 3 rounds until the summer break. A maximum of 83 points can be won across all these three events, with Belgium being the sprint. So we could be in a situation like he's not even going to be still in. P3
Well,
by the summer break.
and that's why today I decided to make Andrew's really, really early 2026 driver lineup predictions because we have a lot of drivers that have no seats next year. And if we continue on the path that we're going, this could be a lot of fun.
So I think 8 seats still have not been filled.
Right.
If I've checked
So
Wikipedia, which I don't know how accurate that is.
I think it's going to be fairly accurate because when you think about it, like Antonelli only signed really like a 1 year deal. Russell declined his option, so technically he doesn't have a contract for next year, sort of idea. But would you like to hear my early driver prediction, John?
I would like to hear that. But before we go, let's go into our advertisement of the episode. F1 Podcast is going to be at Garden Bar Bodega this Sunday to catch the British Grand Prix. Doors open at 9:30. Yes, there is still going to be a group of people going to Trinity Commons. So if you like to go in the West End and go race there or watch the race there, you're more than happy to. But we're going to be at Garden Bar Bodega, 1173 Dundas Street East. My man Thomas, we're looking forward to, is invited us, so we're looking forward to being there. And that is our commercial, or whatever you want to call that, our, I guess, commercial break. And let's go right into it.
Awesome. So these predictions are solely based on one source, and that is my brain. With some research, this is what I feel. McLaren, they're going to keep Norris and Piastri. Both have long-term deals well beyond 2026. And it would be stupid for Zach Brown to split both of them up, considering that, with the two of them and assuming the trajectory that McLaren keep going, they have the opportunity to win the World's Constructors' Championship for the next 5, 6, 7 years, depending on how long both of them are there. And both of them can win multiple World Drivers' Championships. That's how good they are. And I think if you're McLaren, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sort of idea. Ferrari, maybe a little bit controversial depending on the news, but I think they keep both Hamilton and Leclerc. Both have contracts that continue or end after 2026. Lewis, I believe, it ends at 2026. Charles is continuing on to like 2028, 2029. Lewis could be the wild card, but because there's been reports that the team is unhappy, but Fred has come out mentioning that's a ton of BS. So I think they keep Hamilton next year, but really don't extend him so that he can prove as to why he should stay in that case. But I think they keep him, as you mentioned, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So that's the case. Now, Mercedes. I believe Max wants out of Red Bull. You can see it on his face after the race weekends. He's just not happy with the car. So he will become the ultimate Darth Vader, and he's going to go to Mercedes next season, where he is going to race with his boy that he crashed with this past weekend, Kimi Antonelli. And the reason I say that is because 2026 onwards is very much an engine battle, and Mercedes typically always has the engines that win championships every year. If you give Max a car with a great engine, I think he's going to win multiple drivers' championships, and that's what Mercedes wants to get back into that fold. Could lead to constructors' championships. And I believe Toto is more apt to keep Kimi as a younger driver and give Max a teammate that he can work with, mentor, showcase that Max is truly the number one, right? Whereas I think if George and him were together, it's oil and water mixing at that point.
Right.
And they're both going to be thinking number one driver. No, could create big problems. That's why I'm going for Verstappen and Antonelli at Mercedes. Hot take. That's what it is. Red Bull, with Verstappen leaving, we're going to have Sonoda leading the charge with Isaac Hadjar getting the promotion up to Red Bull. Helmet wouldn't consider Lawson in this case because he failed the first time around. He's not really one to give second chances outside of Daniel at VCarb, but we saw it with Gasly. We saw it with Albon, right? Once you've tried to make it in the seat, you don't, you're gone, right? Clear as day. Next team, Alpine. I think this is going to be crazy. Pierre Gasly's going to stay there, but this man has been recently inquired by Alpine about his services at Mercedes. And yes, I think Valtteri Bottas signs with Alpine next season. Briatore wants someone who can win, plus Alpine are moving to Mercedes engine next season. Bottas has tremendous experience, and then, he's won with the Mercedes outfit, Mercedes engines, and he could really help Alpine in terms of development where they are. So I think that is like, why not bring Bottas in that case? Uh, Haas, I think like Haas and Sauber will keep their outfits will keep their lineup in terms of Ocon and Behrman. Ocon showed tremendous strength at the seat of Haas this season. He scored 23 the last 29 of the team's 29 points this season, both on multi-year deals. Behrman being a part of the Ferrari Academy would benefit driving a Ferrari engine next season. I just think it makes the most sense. Sauber, Hulkenberg, and Bortoleto both have long-term deals on, multi-year deals on that team. And Audi more than likely are going to want to have some consistency carry over from the Sauber outfit. So, best way to do that, maintain the driver's lineup, keep the consistency going. VCARB, Lawson is going to be the leader there because he's strong, strong finish in Austria, more points, as mentioned, more points in a Racing Bull this year than Sonoda and a Red Bull. But Helmut will not want to move him up to the top team, so he's going to be maintained to be a veteran there. Could lead VCARB into the 2026 era. So you take a look at the Red Bull driver program, and there's two in F2 right now that are doing really well: Marty and Lindblad. I think Marty is going to go over Lindblad, despite Lindblad being ahead of Marty in the F2 standings, because he's slightly older than Lindblad and he's being mentored by Fernando Alonso. Pretty good to have that kind of leadership or that mentorship drive into the Red Bull. So I think they'll bring him up from F2. Aston Martin, going to stay the same. I mean, Alonso will stay to help Newey with the new car. And no matter what, Lance will be a driver as long as he wants to be when his dad is the owner of the team. Nothing else will tell us different. And then for Williams, I think they're going to keep him very much in the long-term development plan. And to do that, Albon and Sainz are going to lead the charge. Despite Sainz struggling, I think his experience is going to be crucial for 2026 development onwards. Now, there you go to Cadillac. And we have a few people that don't have seats, right? So I think as a new team in the sport, you want to prioritize a few things to kind of become competitive. Youth is a key one. Experience is also key, but sponsorship money to help pay for those development costs. I know they're a major works team, but I think sponsorship money can go a long way in terms of immediate resources to make your team competitive against the rest of the field. So I think the two drivers that will drive at Cadillac next season will be George Russell and Sergio Perez. Russell brings a sort of youth to the team, a hunger of a driver who wants a long-term deal. And it would be a very interesting project for him to be on a long-term deal at Cadillac in the sense that it's a new team. He can really get his feet wet with the team and really, bring them up to competitive level. And then I think with the money that Perez can bring into the sport, he's going to be the second seater. And to be honest with you, we've seen over the past few years that now if your really name isn't Max Verstappen, Red Bull is undrivable by any driver in that case. So do we really blame Perez for how bad he was last season? I don't think so anymore, right? Considering what the car is just shit. So I think Russell and Perez will lead Cadillac, and yet that is my very early predictions for the 2026 lineup.
These are pretty hot takes, not gonna lie. I think I'll save my comments, and curious to see what everybody thinks of Andrew's predictions. Shocked that you don't have Colton Herta in that, and that Sebastian Vettel or Sebastian Vettel or Daniel Ricciardo is not in one of these. But hey, time will tell. Also, Daniel Ricciardo was really loving himself at Wimbledon the other day. I don't know if you saw the photo of him with his long
retirement life is good for him. He's enjoying it.
There are clearly a lot of takeaways going into the British Grand Prix this weekend in terms of McLaren's dominance. If these rumors still keep going on about Verstappen and Mercedes, how do Ferrari respond? I know Lewis Hamilton has a special hat this weekend dedicated to the track. And then just kind of seeing there's a lot of other teams I still got eyes on, and when do we start hearing more conversations about these contracts? So there's a lot to kind of impact from this weekend in the Austrian Grand Prix. My name is Jonathan. That is Andrew. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the F1 podcast. We will see you at Garden Bar Bodega this Sunday. And until then, stay passionate.